Okay, ready when you are, Liz.
Okay. I call to order the
Yep.
Historic Preservation Commission meeting.
Bam, yeah, smack it, there you go.
I'm afraid of it being too loud. Oh, great. All right. If we could do roll call.
Okay.
Lou Pietzak?
Karen Suckamow?
Liz Cyberling.
John Fuller.
We have Dana Gayfeller absent. Excused.
Just this once.
Yep.
I move approval of the agenda that we have before us.
I'll second.
All.
Jen-
Say all.
Yep.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
There you go.
Write that down.
We'll call John.
Yeah.
It'll go faster.
Okay. Then do I?
Yep, you're gonna want to entertain a motion to open the public hearing, and I'll just kind of guide you through the staff introduction.
Okay.
I move that we entertain the public hearing that we have before us.
You want a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right. All right, so we are discussing Chapter 25 of the city's Code of Ordinances. That is our historic preservation ordinance. In the packet to commissioners. Anything in yellow is a change or an addition to what was previously in our Code of Ordinance. I'll explain some of those changes. But the summary of changes, primarily the reason for doing this is when we recodified our Code of Ordinances, there were sections of our old chapter that were left out. But it reestablishes our old historic preservation district. So there are no changes in downtown. We do have to notify those property owners, but there's no changes in terms of how we do business. We are just making sure that we have that district established, because in our new code it has gone away the last couple of months, so we're trying to get that back on. This tries to reestablish our non-advisory members. We always used to have Park Service, I guess the Library Museum, and Hoover Foundation, at least non-voting advisory members that would sit with you guys, and that got lost in the transition as well. The two actual changes to make notes of is it establishes an underground railroad historic district to preserve James Townsend's Traveler's Rest on East Main, and then establishes those administrative review rights for historic signage. Authority is given to myself and the chair of the Historic Preservation. That is so that way somebody with a non-controversial window decal doesn't have to wait months on end to get approval. Anything that's controversial, or if we disagree, chair and the administrator, it'll be the board that will vote on that. Anything that is an exterior sign or digging into the building, any type of that, will come before this board. But the window decals, we figured we can fast track those. So there is that yellow or highlighted language. Guess I'll let you kind of sift through it. But I just copied old language from the last chapter, outside of that administrative review and outside of Traveler's Rest. I guess I will step away from the podium and allow anybody to speak pro or con to this chapter.
Will you answer questions?
Yes.
I was wondering why the Preservation District has property located in CB1, CB2, CI2. Are there any other districts that would be appropriate for this property? Not that I can think of anything that would fit. But can you think of any? Or any reason to have residential districts, for example?
What's the section you're looking at?
I'm looking at the section on districts, which is D, and point number 2, which tells about what kind of property can be in the preservation district upon application of owners.
2603D. Sorry, I'm just trying to find it.
That's 2602D, right?
Okay.
Well, it's D and sub 2.
Okay. Consists of all those properties located within
CB1 and
West Range
CB2.
Historic District. Okay, property located in CB1, CB2, CI2 or C1, the two. I think that's C1, the two districts.
I think it's an I, but I don't know.
I think it's supposed to be a 1.
Mm.
May be included upon application of property. That's going to be your guys' preference. For the preservation district in itself, I'm probably wondering that language was probably selected in the 80s, because I'm going to guess there probably was a residential property really close that
Mhm.
probably didn't want to be on it. I am not opposed if you guys want to amend this code, this chapter, to include residential. That's not going to bother me, but
Well, it applies only upon request of a property owner, so I don't think that forces anyone to do anything. But it just seemed to me that it shouldn't be quite as narrow.
okay. Okay.
So property located in West Branch.
Okay.
And there's people that have asked from time to time about having their residence
Mm-hmm.
in a historic district.
Oh, well, this would give them the chance. You know. So anyway, that's my thought here. It might be better to be broader rather than excluding some areas. And there's, in parentheses, see form of application in the appendix. I didn't look at the appendix, but to whom does the property owner apply? To the administrator, to the Preservation Commission, to the...
City office itself, and then I would work with the chair on that.
Sounds fine. I did have one other question or comment, and that's way at the end about non-conforming signs. And it describes signs before 1991, signs after 1991, and all future signs have to comply. And then it says variances may be granted upon showing of undue hardship. Who does the variance? I mean, it's
It's a good question.
And what would these variances be?
on what criteria?
You'd have
yeah.
to define undue hardship. If you go by Board of Adjustments, you have to prove that you can't use your property as intended, you can't sell it and get a reasonable price. There has to be something unique to either that site or that property. And then 4, it is not altering that neighborhood or that area. So it would be really hard to prove a variance on a sign. But it would be Board of Adjustment that reviews
Okay.
those types of variances.
it's like mine, it was grandfathered in, but then when I redid it, I went by the size specifications.
So then I think it should be said that variances may be granted upon showing of undue hardship to the zoning board of adjustment.
Got it.
That's all I've got.
Any other public comments or member comments? I would motion to close. Liz, I'd motion to close the public hearing, and then you guys can ask further questions. Need a motion from
A motion to close the public hearing.
So
Aye.
moved.
And I second, or third. So you say,
All those
All those
in
in
favor?
favor?
Aye.
I
aye,
got that much.
then you get to hang your gavel once more.
Okay, really?
There, that's good.
Is that better?
Okay, well,
Great.
just as a matter of discussion, I think it's great that we're including Travelers Rest. Gives us opportunities there for funding eventually, and certainly is an important part of the city's history. And I hope there weren't any other things left out of the recodification that have to be fixed. But anyway.
Does anybody have any disagreements with John Fuller's comments on the ordinance?
No.
Okay. So you'll want somebody to motion to make, so all you gotta do is say, so moved, but I'll make sure this is recorded. But motion to make the Historic Preservation District available to more zones, zoning districts. That applications go to the city office on the administrative review of signs,
And finally, to clarify how variances are provided.
and that would be, yep.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Talk again.
So now we have item 6.
So, our status updates for CLG. I was able to lock down spreadsheets, so I'll work with Karen, and it sounds like Carolyn, an old member, may be willing to help Karen out with the inventory. Working on figuring out that the staffing issue, where we have to have X amount of hours. So, still working on that. Those are gonna be our biggest hurdles. I don't plan on applying for CLG until next fall, just because I'm still getting feet wet
year
in the
from now?
administrative. Yep. still getting my feet wet in the administrative position. And I don't wanna take on too much, until I get a good handle of things. And, yeah,
You don't want your head lopped off this soon, right?
yeah, yeah.
Didn't that historic preservation plan have locations in it?
It did, but they wanted, we did all the way up to year 100, and they want
Oh,
year
that's right.
50.
Yeah,
So-
that's right.
So that's,
It's like most of us.
yeah, so that's gonna be a tedious, project that'll take some time. Travelers Rest, there's 2 interested consultants, in terms of getting that on a nomination, historic National Registry. It's just working out timelines with them. There's just not a lot of consultants in the state that do that, but there's 2 that are interested in doing stuff later this fall, but I gotta lock that down. Both of them were big on trying to apply for multiple grants from the state, and I think at this point, kinda just want it done, so we can hopefully transfer over to Park Service, if that's the route property owner chooses to go at that point. But that at least gives the opportunity for that to be a public site, when that property may transfer from its current property owner. But until it's a national registered property, and until an act of Congress, Park Service can't start maintaining it. But that's probably our best bet, if we want that to be a public asset, is the National Park Service taking advantage of that, having that here in town. So, but your first step in preserving it is this ordinance, so that way no one can demolish it or can severely alter it at all. So, outside of your paint and things like that, but if you start doing severe alterations, it'd have to come before this board. So, if that passes.
I understand that.
So,
Do you think
I'm not planning on anything crazy, trust me.
do you think the Park Service would provide part of the funding to pay the consultant?
if you wanna wait 5 years.
No.
That tends to be the answer I get from Pete a lot. It's 5 years. Maybe something like that, it could be 1 or 2 years, but any type of, unexpected, somewhat larger project, it's 5 years. I've talked to him about, even Parkside Trail, if we end up doing something along there. He's trying to put in an application for that, and that's 5 years. That's, 5 years for stuff like that, so.
And do you have a very vague price tag on what it takes?
So it's just gonna depend on which one we go with, so it's gonna depend on time and quotes, but the 2 are from Coralville, Iowa City area. The rest are, in the state or not around the area. So one's a professor at the university and the other one's from Coralville. So
Can we know who they are?
I don't have their names
Oh,
off the
okay.
top of my head, so.
Are they they're independent or are they with an outfit? Okay.
University professor sometimes will, have a student help, but for the most part, it's kind of his side stuff he does. So, sorry, I don't have the names on the top of my head. So,
Oh, it's okay.
but
I wouldn't know.
at some point, we'll want to get quotes and final quotes and dates for that for the donors to select what they want to go with. So I'm just coordinating it. So.
And I only asked about the cost just to get a very vague notion of what it takes to do one of these jobs,
Yeah.
in case we have other places that might want to be on the historic register.
It's not as hard when you've got documentation. So as long as the stuff that the property owner has, and as long as, you know, I've even had some people email me as they've heard we're trying to do this with their own information. That tends to be the hardest part. The application itself, if you've got the facts to prove it in hand, it's a lot easier. But
Mhm.
And how long does that process take, like after they apply usually? Do you know?
I do not know
Okay.
off the top of my head. I don't know if they accept them as a rolling basis. It's, you know, it's one of those things it's not like it's a grant. You either meet the criteria or you don't.
Mhm.
So. Those are my biggest updates. We'll wanna meet again in 3 months to go over progress on CLG updates and then Travelers Rest. Hopefully I'll have the final, who our consultant's gonna be. Other last items anyone has?
No, sir, not in my case.
Okay.
What about the town hall?
Don't have an issue throwing that in, but that would be up to the donors if they wanna throw that in, so, you know. So, it makes sense to do two at once, but
So they would have to do all the
Oh,
documentation
I
too?
see.
Oh, okay.
Hmm.
And
That
same
may
with
be-
Friends Church?
that may be where it's harder.
Okay.
Hmm.
If you've got the documentation, and I can have the
Lane
consultant.
had some of that,
You did?
started on that
I
bill.
don't know what do you mean kind of by documentation, like by abstract?
Yes, and stories say proving that John Brown was there, or stories proving that slaves were there.
Okay,
That nature,
okay.
because they're gonna wanna verify that it's not just somebody who made it up in 1909 and it got carried past through the grapevine, and then everybody thinks that's a fact and it's not, so.
I don't want any fake news.
So, yeah, whether it's fake news or not. I think with churches, I think you have to make the argument, I think with Friends, you could probably be okay because you make the argument it's a historically Quaker town, but I think sometimes you have to prove it's a special historical architectural type. Or somebody significant, you know, did the architecture design, or it's some kind of materials that aren't used, but I think you can tie it to the local lineage of some of West Branch, and, you know, Quakers are pretty stout, you know, abolitionists, so, you know, that kind of carried on in the town, so. But I'm not sure about town hall. That would be, I don't know what we would do for documentation on that. I wonder if that's stuff we have in our hidden files.
I thought that was one of Roger's babies at the beginning, when he got on.
I don't know.
He probably
But-
forgot.
When Lane Shields was here, he started some of that research, and he had, what was that, fire in the 50s and other stuff. And,
You think it would be in the Heritage Museum?
No, I think I have some of Blaine's
Lane
materials.
stuff.
But I think that what's important about Town Hall is that it was a WPA project.
Yeah.
And there aren't that many of those left around. So it has that kind of significance.
Yeah. No, I think you can tie that, and I think that would work. The other thing we're battling with is energy efficiency in that building, so that's the other battle. Because if we throw it on National Historic Registry, and we're a public entity, then we have to follow those rules. If it's on the Historic Registry and you're a private owner and you're not getting any public funds, you can still do whatever you want with it, but I think we kind of get docked for it if we apply for grants, if somebody tattles.
I suspect you would not have any problems with the interior, if it's more weatherproofing, if it's more insulation, if it's a different heating mechanism. And I don't know that you'd want to change the exterior very much. I know the windows are probably very inefficient, but even that can be worked on without disturbing the facade of the building. Well, anyway, first things first.
Yeah, we gotta get Travelers Rest done.
Is it my line?
Well, your line would be if there are no more questions or discussion, then I bring this meeting, I adjourn the meeting. So,
You entertain a motion.
well, yes. Either that or you
As
just
John
won't
said.
do it.
Sometimes you just do it on
But I'm very sure.
Does that mean you made the motion, John?
Yes, I
Okay.
move to adjourn this Preservation
I'll
Commission
second.
meeting.
All in favor?
Uh,
Okay, we're adjourned.
You can bang that much harder.
Yeah, you can.
You know, it's kind of a couple
Get your
of them.
aggressions out.
No, well, one of
Maybe if
the,
I had
I don't suppose this is being recorded.
I own
It is.
It is.
I think we met once.
I hope no one watches it.
Well, that'd be nice, wouldn't it?
I'm not meant for leadership.
Oh, of course you